The knock on my door sounded polite, but greed always dresses itself in manners first. Through the lace curtains, I saw my son and daughter standing there together for the first time in years, wearing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They came for the house their father built, but I'd already turned it into something they could never own again. When you live alone long enough, you start to recognize every sound your house makes. The soft creak of the hallway floorboard on rainy mornings. The hum of the old refrigerator Charles swore he'd replace. One day. Even the sigh of the wind slipping through the cracked kitchen window, all of it becomes part of your breathing. That's why that knock felt wrong. Sharp. Controlled. The kind of knock that doesn't ask permission, it announces intention. I was sitting in Charles's old chair by the window, half watching some talk show I didn't care about, when it came again, too short, one long. It was a rhythm I didn't recognize, but my heart did. It said, "They want something." Through the lace curtain, I saw them. Marcus, my son, mid-40s, confident, pressed shirt, the same way his father used to dress when he wanted to impress the bank manager. And beside him, my daughter Alicia, early 40s, soft-spoken, eyes darting everywhere but home. They looked like family in a photograph posed, polished, practiced. But to me, they looked like ghosts. I hadn't seen them since the funeral 3 years ago. Not a birthday, not a holiday, not even a phone call when the pneumonia nearly took me last winter. So why now? I opened the door and managed a smile. Well, look who the wind blew in. Marcus grinned too wide. "Hey, Mama." Alicia's hug was light, all perfume, no warmth. "You look good," she said. I laughed softly. "I look my age, baby, but thank you." We stood there too long, pretending we didn't notice the years stacked between us. Finally, I stepped aside. "Come on in. Don't make the neighbors think I got company for once." They chuckled politely, because that's what you do when you don't know what to say. Inside, the house felt smaller, or maybe it was me who'd grown smaller inside it. Their eyes moved everywhere. The pictures on the wall, the old mahogany clock, the armchair still holding the shape of Charles's shoulders. Alicia whispered, "It still smells like Dad." I nodded. "That's because I still clean like he's coming home." Marcus cleared his throat, that telltale sign he was working up to something. "Mama," he started, using a gentle tone I didn't trust. "Aunt Diane said you've been thinking about selling the house." I sipped my coffee, slow. "Diane talks too much." He forced a laugh. "We just thought, this place, it's part of the family. Dad built it. It means something." Alicia chimed in quickly. "It wouldn't feel right if strangers moved in." I looked from one to the other, both of them suddenly sentimental about walls they hadn't touched in years. "Funny," I said quietly. "I could have sworn it already got sold the day you both stopped visiting." Silence filled the kitchen, thick as old syrup. Marcus rubbed his hands together. "That's not fair, Mama. We were grieving. Life got busy, you know how it is." "I do," I said. "But grief don't stop love, or calls, or visits. Not unless you let it." Alicia lowered her eyes. "We didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said. "That's what makes it hurt worse." I stood, refilled their mugs, though neither asked for coffee. The clink of the spoon was the only sound. "When your father died," I said softly, "this house started talking back to me. Every empty room, every photo frame. I thought maybe one of you would stop by, help fix that leaky roof, mow the grass, sit and eat with me again." I smiled bitterly. "But I guess you were too busy living the life your father and I worked ourselves half to death to give you." They didn't answer. Marcus stared at the table. Alicia fidgeted with her ring. "Yes," I said finally, setting my cup down. "I'm selling. It's too big for me now, too heavy to carry alone." The silence broke with a spark. Marcus leaned forward. "But Mama, you can't just sell it. This house, it's ours. It's the family's." I met his eyes. "Yours? You paid one light bill here in your life, Marcus." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Alicia whispered. Mama, maybe you're not thinking straight since Dad passed. That line, it hit harder than it should have. I stared at her, at the daughter I once held through every fever and heartbreak. I may be old, I said slowly, but I ain't confused. I know who loved me, and who loved what I had. The clock behind us ticked, loud as judgment. They looked everywhere but at me, and in that silence, I realized something painful. They didn't come home, they came to claim it. To measure the walls, not the memories. To see what was left of their inheritance, not their mother. I smiled a small, tired smile. You two didn't come to visit, you came to collect. Marcus's jaw clenched. Alicia turned her face away. And in that moment, I felt something inside me shift, not crack, but solidify. The soft part of me, the one that kept hoping, finally turned to stone. I didn't know it yet, but that knock on my door was the beginning of their second funeral, the one for whatever love was left between us. After they left that day, the house fell quiet again, the kind of quiet that feels like judgment. I sat in that same chair long after sunset, staring at the front door as if it might apologize for opening to them. People talk about grief like it's a storm, loud, violent, messy. But for me, grief came like winter, cold, still, endless. And after Charles died, it never really thawed. I met Charles when I was 19, standing behind the counter at Melvin's diner. He walked in, smelling like motor oil and new promises, ordered a coffee he couldn't afford, and left a tip he couldn't spare. He said, "One day, I'm going to build you a house so solid the wind will go around it." And Lord, he did. That house, this house, was our miracle. Every nail, every board, every stroke of paint carried the weight of our prayers. We couldn't afford a contractor, so we built it ourselves, piece by piece after long shifts. Some nights, I'd be holding a flashlight while he hammered in the dark, both of us laughing, just to keep from crying. When Marcus was born, we finished the roof. When Alicia came along, we planted the magnolia tree out front. Every milestone, every bruise, every argument, it all happened inside these walls. That's why the thought of selling it used to feel like blasphemy, until love started haunting it instead of living in it. After Charles passed, people promised to visit. They meant it when they said it, I could tell. But time has a way of stretching the distance between good intentions and action. At first, the calls came once a week, then once a month, then only on holidays, and then nothing. Marcus got busy with his firm in Atlanta, too tied up to come home. Alicia had her own family, a husband who thought my quiet ways were backward, who preferred I stayed out of their lives unless invited. So I stayed out. You'd be surprised how easy it is to disappear when nobody's looking. Still, I kept the house ready. I cooked too much food every Sunday in case somebody dropped by. Kept extra towels folded in the hall closet just in case. I even polished Charles's old toolbox, thought maybe Marcus would want to take it one day. He never did. Then last year, when the doctors said my heart was acting up, I spent 5 nights in the hospital machines beeping, nurses whispering. I watched other patients get visitors, flowers, balloons. The nurse came to me with pity in her eyes and asked, "You got anyone I can call?" I gave her 2 numbers. Neither answered. Both went to voicemail. That's when I realized grief doesn't just bury the dead. It buries the living, too. I thought about Charles then. He used to tell me, "When I'm gone, don't let loneliness trick you into begging for love. You already earned yours." I didn't understand what he meant back then. Now I do. Love that has to be begged for turns sour in your mouth. So I learned to live quiet. Morning coffee by the window. Radio sermons on Sundays. Letters to the kids, I never sent stacks of them, tied with ribbon, sitting in a drawer by the bed. Each one starts the same. "I hope you're doing well. I miss you." Each one ends the same. "Love, Mama." I stopped writing after the 10th letter. Not because I stopped missing them, but because the ink started to feel like begging. Some nights I'd walk through the house, touching the walls like they were skin. The clock, ticking in the living room, was the only heartbeat I heard. I'd whisper, "Charles, you built us a house too big for one soul." And sometimes I swear the wind would answer back. So when Marcus and Alicia showed up after all those years, not to hold me, not to check on me, but to talk about the house, it felt like the final proof. They didn't miss me. They missed what I owned. All those years of silence had turned into distance you could measure with a deed. That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after the lights were off, my fingers tracing the grain in the wood. This table had seen it all: our first paycheck, our children's report cards, Charles's last breakfast. I whispered, "You'd know what to do, wouldn't you, Charles?" And for the first time in a long time, I heard his voice in my memory, calm, steady, full of faith. "Don't let them take what we built, baby. Not the house, not your peace." Tears came then, quiet ones, the kind that don't need sound to hurt. I wiped them away and looked around, realizing how much of myself I had poured into these walls, how much of my life I'd given to people who'd already moved on. That's when something inside me began to shift. Not anger, no. Something colder, clearer, a thought that whispered, if they came here for a fight, maybe it's time I finally stopped losing. And in that stillness, with only the hum of the old fridge keeping me company, I made myself a silent promise. The next time they knocked, I wouldn't open the door as their mother. I'd open it as the woman Charles taught me, to be the one who knew how to fight for what mattered. The next time they came, it was a Sunday. Funny how they picked that day, the one Charles and I always called our peace day. The day the smell of cornbread filled the kitchen and gospel hummed from the old radio by the window. But that morning, peace didn't even step through the front door. I'd set 2 extra plates anyway. Old habits die hard. Part of me hoped, foolishly, that maybe they were coming to apologize, to sit, talk, laugh, to remember that love is louder than greed. But the moment I saw Marcus's tight jaw and Alicia's anxious smile, I knew better. They didn't come for me. They came for the house, the land, the legacy they forgot to tend. Marcus started with small talk, the kind that sounds like it's rehearsed. "How's your heart, Mama? You look good. Been keeping busy?" His eyes, though they were already moving, measuring, calculating. Alicia poured herself tea, hands trembling slightly. I watched her, thinking about the little girl who used to run to me crying every time she scraped her knees. Now she couldn't even meet my eyes. I smiled faintly. "I'm doing fine, baby. Just getting used to the quiet." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "You shouldn't be alone here, Mama. Big place like this, it's a lot to take care of. You should think about moving closer to us. We could help sell this place and get you something smaller." There it was, the real reason behind the Sunday visit. Wrapped up in kindness, laced with control. I tilted my head. "Sell this place?" He nodded, rehearsed confidence dripping from his tone. "It's time, Mama. You're getting older. It's too much work. Besides, Dad would have wanted it to stay in the family." That line in the family hit me like a slap. Because I am the family. And somehow, they'd stopped seeing that. I took my time before answering. "Your father built this home for us. Not for your wallets, not for your comfort, for family, for love." You remember that word? Alicia's eyes flickered up. "Mama, it's not about money." I chuckled softly. "Baby, it's always about money when folks start talking about what someone would have wanted." Marcus sighed, exasperated. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. We're trying to help." I leaned forward. "Help who, Marcus? Me or yourselves?" He straightened, his voice rising just enough to crack the politeness. "We're family, Mama. Don't twist this." I smiled. Slow. "Family? Where were you when I was in the hospital last year? When I couldn't lift my groceries? When I called just to hear your voices and got nothing but voicemail? He shifted, glancing at Alicia, searching for backup. Alicia spoke up softly. Mama, maybe you're just overthinking this. Dad's been gone 3 years. We all miss him. But maybe it's time to move on. I turned toward her, steady but sharp. Move on? From what, child love? Or memory? Because I already had to move on from both of you. The silence that followed could have broken glass. Even the clock in the kitchen seemed to hold its breath. Marcus leaned back, crossing his arms. You're being unreasonable. Nobody's trying to take anything from you. We just don't want you making bad decisions while you're emotional. There it was, the same word Alicia used before. Emotional. Like my grief made me incompetent. Like my love made me weak. I felt something shift in my chest. Not pain, not sorrow. Steel. The kind of strength that comes from realizing people mistake your kindness for confusion. I stood slowly, my hands resting on the table to steady the tremor that wasn't fear, it was fury kept on a leash. Let me tell you all something, I said quietly. This house has survived hurricanes, sickness, debt, and death. It'll survive your greed, too. Alicia flinched, tears brimming in her eyes, but Marcus only shook his head. We'll talk about this later, when you've calmed down. I smiled, then calm, cold, certain. Baby, this is me calm. He pushed his chair back, muttering something about stubborn old women under his breath as he stood. Alicia lingered by the door, looking torn between guilt and loyalty. She turned to me, whispering, Mama, he just wants what's best. I looked at her, really looked. Then he should have started with what's right. When the door closed behind them, the air felt clearer somehow. The house exhaled, and so did I. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the victim of their distance. I felt like the witness of their undoing. Because the moment Marcus raised his voice at me, he didn't realize he'd already lost something far more valuable than any property. He'd lost my silence. I poured myself another cup of coffee, hands still steady, and looked out the window toward the magnolia tree Charles and I planted the year Alicia was born. Its roots had split the ground wide open over the years, strong, patient, unstoppable. And I thought to myself, maybe I need to start growing that way too. The knock had woken the past. Their words had opened the wound. But somewhere inside that pain, I could already feel something else rising, something that sounded a lot like justice. It was 2 weeks before I heard from either of them again. The silence should have been comforting, but it wasn't. It felt like the air before a storm still, heavy, waiting to break. I went about my days the same way I always did. Morning coffee by the window. A slow walk to the mailbox. Dinner for one at the kitchen table that used to seat 4. But even in the quiet, I could feel it, something was shifting, happening behind my back. I didn't have proof yet, just instinct. And let me tell you, a mother's instinct is sharper than any lawyer's pen. Then one afternoon the phone rang. It was Henry Lawson, Charles's old friend, and the only lawyer we'd ever trusted. His voice came low, hesitant, like he was about to tell me something that would break my heart a second time. May, he said, I probably shouldn't be calling, but your son came by my office yesterday. My chest tightened. Marcus? What for? He was asking questions about the deed to your house. Said he needed to confirm ownership details, something about protecting family assets. I went quiet. I could hear paper rustling on his end, his sigh heavy through the line. I told him everything's in your name, always has been, and I advised him to talk to you directly. But I thought you should know. For a long moment, I couldn't even speak. I just stared out the window, my reflection trembling in the glass. Marcus. My baby boy who once held my hand crossing the street had gone to a lawyer behind my back. Not to help me, to take from me. When I finally found my voice, it came out calm. Too calm. Thank you, Henry. You were right to tell me. We hung up, and the silence that followed felt louder than thunder. I went straight to the hallway cabinet, where I kept all the important papers, birth certificates, insurance, the house deed. The folder was there, but it felt lighter somehow. I opened it and froze. The second page of the deed, the one Charles signed years ago, was gone. I sat down hard, the edges of the world going blurry. For a moment, I couldn't tell if it was grief or fury, because both burn the same. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat at the kitchen table, the missing paper haunting me like a phantom limb. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called Alicia. Her voice sounded tired or guilty. Maybe both. "Mama?" "Baby," I said softly. "Did you happen to see any papers when you were here? Something from the cabinet?" There was a pause, just long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. Then came the lie, sweet and slippery. "No, Mama. Why?" My hand clenched around the phone. "Because something's missing," I said. "Something important." She stammered. "Maybe you misplaced it." I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. "I've been keeping those papers safe since before you could spell your own name, Alicia. I don't misplace things." The line went quiet. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "Marcus said you're not thinking clearly. He's just trying to protect what Dad built." I closed my eyes. There it was. The truth in her words. They weren't protecting their father's legacy. They were protecting their inheritance, and they were willing to steal from me to get it. After she hung up, I sat there for a long while, the phone still in my hand, my pulse pounding in my ears. I wasn't angry anymore. No, anger burns fast and fades quick. This was colder, the kind of stillness that comes before a plan. I stood, walked to Charles's old desk, and pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside was a wooden box, painted blue, chipped at the corners. Charles used to call it the insurance box. I hadn't opened it in years. When I lifted the lid, dust floated like ghosts in the morning light. Inside were old letters, a small Bible, and a thick envelope marked property documents. My hands shook as I opened it, and there it was. The second copy of the deed. And right beside it a letter, written in Charles's neat, slanted handwriting. It was dated the year before he died. My breath caught as I unfolded it. "May, if you're reading this, something's gone wrong. Don't ever let anyone talk you out of what's yours. The home is in your name only. If it's ever sold, the proceeds go into the trust, the one we made for the community center, not for the children. You always said love should leave something good behind. This is my way of making sure it does." I sat there holding that letter, my tears falling onto the paper, smudging his ink. He knew. Somehow Charles had known the kind of storm that would come after him, and he'd already built me shelter. For the first time since he passed, I felt him near not as a memory, but as a promise. A whisper that said, "You're not alone in this, baby. I already saw it coming." I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling, and let out a long, trembling breath. All the hurt, all the disappointment, began to harden into resolve. They thought they could steal my home, but what they didn't know was that Charles had already written their punishment into the walls. And I intended to make sure they heard every echo of it. I didn't cry again after finding that letter. Not once. Tears had done all they could now. It was time for something steadier. For 3 days, I barely left the house. I moved through it like a soldier walking through sacred ground, touching every wall Charles built, memorizing the weight of it all, not out of nostalgia but out of purpose. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. Just not the kind they were expecting. The blue box sat open on the kitchen table, papers spread like a deck of truth. Charles's handwriting still looped and danced across the page, telling me exactly what I needed to do. If it's ever sold, the proceeds go into the trust, the one for the community center. That trust was our dream once. We'd talked for years about creating a scholarship fund for single parents, giving others the help we never had. I thought that dream had died with him. Turns out, it had just been waiting for me to wake up. I went to the old roll-top desk in the living room, pulled out my worn leather notebook, and started writing names: lawyers, realtors, bankers, and one woman I hadn't spoken to in years. Eleanor, my oldest friend, and the sharpest real estate broker in the county. She used to tell me, "May, you got a quiet fire in you. When it burns, folks don't even notice till the room's already warm." Well, it was burning now. When I called her, she picked up on the second ring. "May Davis? Lord, it's been years." "It has," I said, my voice steady. "And I got something I need to do. I'm selling my house." She hesitated. "You sure?" I smiled into the phone. Never been surer. We met the next day at my kitchen table. Eleanor spread her folders, talking numbers and market value. But I wasn't listening to all that. I was watching the way the morning light hit the blue box, glinting off the brass latch like Charles himself was giving his blessing. When Eleanor asked where the sale money should go, I handed her the letter. Her eyes softened as she read it. He really thought ahead, didn't he? He always did, I said quietly. I just never realized how much he saw coming. We drew up the papers. Half to cover my new place, something small, quiet, near the lake, and the rest to fund the Charles Davis Foundation, a trust for single parents trying to rebuild their lives. That was justice, the kind my heart could live with. But before the world could see my plan, I had to play one more part, the helpless old mother they thought I was. So I let Marcus and Alicia think I'd gone silent again. I didn't answer calls, didn't text. When Alicia left a voicemail saying, "Mama, we just want to make sure you're not being taken advantage of," I smiled. "Don't worry, baby," I whispered to the empty kitchen. "That's exactly what I'm making sure of, too." The next week, Eleanor arranged the listing quietly. No signs in the yard, no gossip in town. Just a few private showings, the kind rich families love the ones who don't need to ask about price. Within days, an offer came in high, clean cash. It was almost poetic, the home Charles built with his hands, now paying for the future of people like us. But I didn't tell the children. Not yet. They needed to walk right into the truth, the way I had walked into their lies. I visited Henry Lawson again, the lawyer who'd warned me. When I showed him Charles's letter and the deed copy, his eyebrows rose. "Well," he said, leaning back, "seems Charles built one last fortress before he left." I nodded. "And now I'm just closing the gates." We updated the documents, locked everything airtight. No loopholes, no appeals, no misunderstandings. Every cent of that sale after my new home purchase would belong to the foundation. When I left Henry's office that afternoon, the sky was turning gold. I stood there for a while, watching the light spill across the courthouse steps, and for the first time in years, I felt free. Not happy happiness is soft, fleeting. No, this was something firmer. Peace built on truth. Justice born from quiet endurance. As I drove home, the magnolia tree came into view, taller now, roots deep enough to crack the walkway. I smiled. Charles always said trees grow toward forgiveness, not revenge. Maybe he was right. I wasn't out for revenge anymore. I was out for balance. That night, I wrote one more letter, the last one. I didn't know if they'd ever read it, but it was for me as much as for them. It said, "You both forgot what this house meant. You saw wood and brick. I saw a lifetime. But when you tried to take it, you gave me something better, a reason to remember who I am." I folded the letter and slid it into the blue box beside Charles's note. Then I whispered to the empty room, "You always did say I was the stronger one, didn't you?" And for the first time since he passed, I believed it. The deal would close in 7 days. 7 days until the house that built our lives would become someone else's. And when that day came, My children would learn the truth, not through anger or shouting, but through the quiet sound of a woman reclaiming her power. The sale closed on a Wednesday. The papers were signed, the keys exchanged, and the house, the one Charles built nail by nail, prayer by prayer, no longer belonged to me. But for the first time, that didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. The realtor's office smelled like lemon polish and ink. When Eleanor handed me the final envelope, she said softly, "You sure you're ready for this?" I smiled, tucking it into my purse. "Eleanor, I've been ready since the day they knocked on my door." That night, I went home to the house that wasn't quite mine anymore, but still felt like it was waiting for one last goodbye. The furniture sat wrapped in plastic, boxes stacked like old memories. I walked from room to room, fingers brushing the walls, whispering my thanks. To the kitchen that held our Sunday laughter. To the hallway that carried the sound of baby feet. To the bedroom where love had lived longer than most marriages survive. And then, I made my final call. "Marcus," I said when he answered. "Dinner. Sunday evening. You and Alicia. Bring the kids if you want." There was a pause, suspicion in his voice. "Dinner? At the house?" "Yes," I said simply. "One last family meal." Sunday came with a cool breeze and the smell of rain in the air. I set the table like old times, my mother's china, cloth napkins, candles in brass holders. Every detail deliberate, like a stage set for truth. When they arrived, I met them at the door, same as before. Marcus, in another one of his crisp suits. Alicia, in a silk blouse, her face tight with unease. They looked around the half-empty house, confusion flickering across their faces. "Mama," Marcus said slowly. "What's going on? Why does it look like you're moving?" I smiled. "Because I am." He frowned. "You're serious about selling?" "I was," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "But the sale's already done." Alicia's eyes widened. "Already? You sold it?" "Yes. It's gone." I poured tea into their cups, calm, steady, the way Charles used to when he had something serious to say. Marcus's voice hardened. "You didn't tell us. We could have—" "Stopped me," I interrupted gently. "I know." He pushed back his chair, anger flashing in his eyes. "Mama, this isn't right. This house belongs to the family. You had no right—" "I had every right," I said, my voice quiet but firm enough to still the air. "I paid for this house. I kept it standing when your father died. I fixed every leak, every broken step, every bill that came through that door. You may have been born here, but I built this life, and I won't let greed rewrite that truth." Alicia whispered, "Mama, where's the money then? What did you do with it?" I looked her in the eye. "I gave it back, to where it belonged, to the people your father wanted it to help." Marcus's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" I reached into my purse, pulled out the official folder, and slid it across the table. "Every cent from the sale," I said softly, "went to establish the Charles Davis Foundation, a trust for single parents in this county who are struggling to get back on their feet. Your father's dream, not mine. His name will live on, not in property, but in purpose." The silence that followed was heavy. Alicia's eyes filled with tears. Marcus's face twisted in disbelief, then anger. "You gave it away? All of it? You gave away our inheritance?" I leaned back, folding my hands in my lap. "No, Marcus. I gave away my house, my share, my years. The inheritance you think you lost was never yours to begin with." He stood up, pacing, his voice trembling with fury. "You've lost your mind. You've just thrown away everything Dad worked for." I met his gaze calmly. "No, I honored everything he stood for. There's a difference." Alicia reached out, her voice breaking. "Mama, why didn't you tell us?" "Because," I said, "I wanted you to see for yourselves what happens when you let greed speak louder than love." Marcus turned away, muttering under his breath. Alicia's tears fell quietly. her shoulders shaking. I felt no triumph, only peace, a deep, quiet peace that settled in my bones. I stood slowly and walked to the window. The magnolia tree swayed in the rain outside, petals drifting down like blessings. Your father used to say a house is just wood and nails, I murmured. But what we build inside it, that's what lasts. When I turned back, they were both silent. Marcus looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. Alicia wiped her eyes, whispering, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "I know, baby," I said softly, "but you let him speak for you, and now you both know what it cost." The rain grew heavier, drumming against the roof like applause from heaven. I picked up my cup, took one last sip, and said, "Dinner's ready. Might as well eat before the food goes cold." Neither moved for a moment. Then Alicia sat back down, quietly sobbing, while Marcus stared at the table, speechless. And in that silence, that beautiful, heavy silence, I felt Charles beside me again, not in body but in spirit. Proud, steady. Like the man who once told me, "Justice don't always shout, May. Sometimes it just breathes." That night, as I blew out the candles, the house seemed to exhale with me free at last. And I thought to myself, they came for the house, but I gave them a lesson instead, one they'll never forget. By Monday morning, the house was empty. The movers' footsteps echoed through the halls like fading memories, each thud a heartbeat I no longer needed. When the truck pulled away, I stood in the doorway, the air still heavy with rain and lemon polish. No tears came, just peace, the kind that feels strange at first, like silence after a long storm. Marcus never called after that dinner. Alicia sent one text 2 days later. "You gave away our childhood, Mama." I typed a reply. "No, baby. I gave away my pain." Then I deleted it. Some truths are better whispered to God than sent to those not ready to hear them. Within a week, word spread. Folks at church stopped me in the grocery store, their eyes soft, their voices full of warmth. "Charles would be proud," they said. "Lord bless you, May, for what you did." I didn't do it for praise, but every kind word felt like sunlight finding its way through old cracks. 2 weeks later, Eleanor drove me to see the new community centre. The sign out front shimmered in the heat. The Charles Davis Foundation building futures from the ground up. Inside, volunteers painted, kids laughed, a baby cried somewhere in the distance. A young woman walked up to me, hands streaked with blue paint. "You Mrs. Davis? I got one of the first scholarships. I'm starting nursing school next month." Her smile broke me open in the best way. I said, "Then you make sure somebody else gets that same chance one day, baby. That's how blessings keep breathing." That night, I moved into my new place, a small 2-bedroom by the lake. Quiet, clean, enough. I unpacked the blue box, placed it on the mantel beside Charles's photo, and whispered, "We did it, love. We turned what hurt us into something good." For the first time in years, the ache in my chest eased. A few mornings later, I found a card in the mailbox, no return address, just Alicia's handwriting. "Mama, I'm sorry. I see what we did now. I hope you're happy, and I hope Daddy's proud." I held it close and smiled. Forgiveness doesn't always need to be spoken. Sometimes it's enough just to arrive. As for Marcus, silence. And I let it be. Life will teach him what I no longer can. The days pass slow now. Sunrise over the lake, tea steaming in my cup, wind brushing the curtains. I've learned that letting go isn't the same as losing. It's choosing what deserves space in your heart and releasing what doesn't. Sometimes I think of the old house not with sadness, but gratitude. It carried me through love, loss, and rebirth. And it left behind something that matters more than walls ever could. Legacy. When the sun dips low and the water glows gold, I whisper to the man who still keeps me company in the quiet. Some homes aren't made of wood and nails. They're built from the moment you stop begging to be loved and start choosing peace instead. and in that still light, I know I am home.